Hey folks, welcome back to the Peach Pundit Podcast. I'm Jason Pye, your host, joined by a full house tonight. Scott Turner, Buzz Brockway, and Eric Harrison, not to be confused with Eric Erickson.
Call me Eric the Younger.
Eric the Younger. Guys, it's good to see all of you.
Good to see you.
Glad to be back.
You were missed. You were gallivanting around in the Midwest last week and looked like you were having a grand old time.
3 Major League Baseball stadiums, 38 roller coasters, 3 amusement parks, 1,984 miles and 42 hours in the car. So
nice.
But who's counting?
Who's counting in these things? Yeah.
So in a couple of recent episodes of the podcast, Buzz has been openly speculating on the future of Stacey Abrams. As we tend to engage in wild speculation on this podcast, it is how we do. Buzz caught a little something yesterday that I think people might find a little interesting. Buzz?
So Stacey Abrams, Democratic superstar, former state legislator, almost governor here in the state of Georgia, is going on tour, but none of the tour dates announced currently are in the state of Georgia. They're all over the country, and it's billed as a conversation about politics and social justice and things that Stacey's interested in. Tickets are on sale. There's a website. I think it's called Stacey Abrams Tour or something like that.com. Anyway, you Google it and you can find it. And for $200, you can have a private meeting with her. And the tickets otherwise are sort of reasonably priced, I suppose, in line with concerts of big bands and music acts and so forth. So I thought that was interesting because it's start from September through November. So it's close to 2.5, 3 month tour. And I don't know, it just made me think that's not what a person gearing up to run for governor does, is announce a tour that don't include any in the state in which she claims to, everybody says she wants to be governor of. So
capitalism is the best form of economic system, isn't it, guys?
Yeah. And she is benefiting from capitalism to the fullest, and I applaud her for it. Good for her. Go, Stacey, go. Make all the money you can make, man.
Scott,
but
go ahead, Buzz.
Well, I was just gonna say, I did get some pushback, which we can talk about in a minute when the rest of you weigh in on this. But there are some who disagree with my bold proclamation that she ain't running.
Scott, Eric.
Yeah. Well, looking at the ticket prices, $32.50 for a ticket's not bad. Yeah, it's like going to the Masquerade.
Yeah,
or the Fox Theater, where you would.
It's cheaper than the Fox, or at least the last time I was there.
Well, I mean, honestly, if you're going to the Fox Theater to see something, you're probably going to see something on par with the theatrics and dramatic intro, and I expect full blown production quality from this tour. I want fireworks. I want music, intro music. I want the full treatment, man. If I'm going to pay $32 to see Stacey Abrams at a venue, I want there to be some showmanship. I want to see like 3-ring circus stuff going on. I want to be constantly entertained.
It's cheaper than tickets to see Hamilton at the Fox Theater, but it is more expensive than most shows and probably almost every show I've been to at the Masquerade.
Here's a question: how does it compare to the Trump Bill O'Reilly tour? That's, I don't know when that's happening, but it's supposedly happening.
Oh, is that still a thing?
I wonder how the ticket prices compare to that.
I have not looked.
Well, I mean, in all fairness for Jason, most of the bands that he goes to watch, it just requires a 2-drink minimum to get in.
Because no one's ever heard of them.
Because no one's ever heard of them, no. And then he spends somehow $400 on the vinyl album for that one band.
I have the most I've ever paid for a vinyl album, sir, is $100. So
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I will spend $100 easily on merch. So there's that.
Yeah.
So all right. So I did receive. I'm not going to name any names, but I did receive some pushback on my theory that Abrams is not running from a people who they're not just people who speculate on stuff. They're people who hear things. So the working theory is that Abrams is going to run. It's just that the field is frozen now. So what's the point of getting in now? Brian Kemp is weak and flailing around trying to fend off Vernon Jones. So she's going to announce in February, and Fair Fight Action has gazillions of dollars, which they do. Stacey does not have any trouble raising money, which is true. She certainly doesn't. And so what's the point of announcing now when she can announce in February and let Brian Kemp worry about Vernon Jones?
Scott?
I just think that's a strategic error if that's in fact the case. You don't give, first of all, Vernon Jones is no threat to Brian Kemp for the Republican nomination. Everything that Brian Kemp is campaigning, he's campaigning right now against Democrats. He's not running for the Republican nomination. That's in the bag. He's running for re-election as governor of the state. And so I think it is a strategic error to give him several months without an opponent to continue to govern in a way that is satisfactory to most Georgians, and to continue to make his case that, look, things aren't so bad, or things are really good compared to where they could have been if somebody else had the helm of this ship. And you're giving this guy all the time in the world to go out there and continue to make that case. I think Buzz, I think you're probably closer to right than the person who told you that you're wrong, or Stacey Abrams is making a huge political blunder.
I tend to agree with you, Scott. And I think the danger for Stacey is nervousness. You can kind of sense it on the Democrat side. Nervousness is increasing. And if she does wait till, as it starts getting closer to the end of the year, eventually somebody's going to say, forget about it. I'm running. And then she's got a primary. Now she may wipe the floor with that person, but I don't know.
Like she did last time.
Yeah, that's true. But she had to spend money, and she had to, fight off an opponent. So I think, yeah.
Kemp has look, and we're going to discuss some things soon that I disagree with Kemp on, but Kemp's got certainly has a lot of things to talk about. I mean, the state's unemployment rate is 4%, which is the 12th lowest in the country, and you can't get much low. I mean, the only way you got to go is down. I mean, Georgia's growing jobs every month, and we've generally recovered from COVID, from the pandemic, and things are going to keep on trucking as long as we don't hit any speed bumps. And I mean, obviously there are concerns, and inflation is a concern, I think, for everybody right now, given the cost of food, and some goods are going up pretty noticeably because they pump so much money in the economy. But in terms of the economy, Kemp has a pretty strong claim. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Definitely.
I do.
Yeah, I think I disagree with Buzz and Scott to some extent that this is a blunder. She's never had a problem raising money, and the last 4 years have definitely reiterated that she can just open up that tap and it just flows. So perhaps the idea behind this world tour is to help funnel some of that into Fair Fight and some of the other grassroots organizations now that can also attack at Kemp. And when she announces in February, new fiscal year for most folks, they can just go ahead and write that, what is it, $7,500 check for primaries and runoffs?
Something like that. I think that's right. I think that's
600 statewide, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be pretty interesting to watch and see. I mean, I mentioned this. I was on a call with some folks last week, or on a Zoom with some folks last week, and where we were talking about Georgia, and I was like, there's speculation that Stacey Abrams isn't going to run. And she's not filed. Granted, she won't have any problem raising money, as Buzz noted, but there's the biggest point of discussion right now is that she's not going to run, not that she is running, and not that she's putting a campaign team in place. So in February, I get it that she clears the field, she jumps in, and she'll raise money fast, but I don't know. I mean, I would be building that war chest come Christmas if not sooner. But that's just me, and I'm not a Georgia Democrat, so I guess do your own thing.
And I do think that people who think that Kemp is incredibly weak underestimate him, and underestimate, as Jason mentioned, I think what what people think. The economy is always a top issue. If unemployment remains low and the Georgia's economy seems to be chugging along, then that all redounds to Kemp's benefit. So,
I think we beat this one to a dead horse, beat a dead horse because
we plenty of other opportunities to beat this horse some more, I'm sure.
They're going.
The perennial rumor is what's going to happen.
On any given podcast, there are three things we're going to discuss: Brad Raffensperger, Stacey Abrams, or she who shall not be named. And so we got two of those tonight, folks. So
congratulations, Secretary Brad. We're not talking about you.
So another interesting story: a bunch of Georgia Democrats went up to DC this past week. I did not see this story, so I'm going to turn it over to whoever the hell said we should include this one. So I think that was
me.
I think that was Buzz.
Yeah, there were a handful. I don't know how many. I saw three names, and Carolyn Hughley. Representative Carolyn Hughley, Representative Billy Mitchell, and Representative B. Wynn, who is a candidate for Secretary of State here in Georgia, went to DC to pal up with the Texas Democrats who have fled the state of Texas and are camped out in DC, trying to draw attention to the need in their mind to pass federal elections legislation. So apparently Senator Warnock came over. I guess Josh McLaren. I'm sorry if I pronounced his last name wrong. I think he was there too. I saw a tweet from him where he had a clip of Senator Warnock speaking, and he said that church bells started ringing in the background, and that was exciting. So they went up there to stand in solidarity with the Texas Democrats and calling for election reform at the federal level. So
interesting. Yeah, the
HR good move for B. Wynn, since she's running for Secretary of State on the Democratic ticket. Get out there and back HR 1 and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
It's a pretty interesting contrast too, because considering Jody Heiss is also running for Secretary of State, and he's making a lot of waves about election laws, and HR 1's obviously DOA in the Senate, and the For the People Act, it's S1 was the original bill, but they tried to amend it through another legislative vehicle. It's dead in the Senate, although Schumer did reserve the right to bring it back up, but that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Obviously infrastructure is the play this week, but all that stuff's not going to happen because the filibuster is going to remain in place for at least another, what is it, 16 months?
A little bit.
Yeah.
At least another 16 months, depending on what happens in the House next year and what happens in the Senate next year. So we'll see. Scott, you got anything you want to add?
The Democrats are just so much better at theater than Republicans, and let's just call this what it is. It's pure theater. I mean, it's entertainment for them. They staged this fly out. They got on a private jet. Never mind the carbon footprint of that flight. They weren't wearing masks. Some of them came down with COVID. All of that's forgiven by the press because, gosh, it's just great showmanship for them to get up there. And the church bells were ringing behind the pastor as he was a U.S. Senator speaking. It's so melodramatic. I mean, gosh, where is Charles Dickens when you need him to describe the scene? It's just amazing stuff. But anyway, that's all I had to offer.
Well, one thing I didn't notice, because I pulled up Twitter here a second ago, and I figured I'd go ahead and bring this up. Doug Collins is trending on Twitter right now. And do you know?
Put that in the chat.
Do you know why Doug Collins is trending right now? Was my next question. Because apparently,
because his former campaign manager is running for lieutenant governor as a Democrat.
No, it is because Doug Collins is apparently Donald Trump's lawyer now.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So that hasn't ended well for anyone else that has taken that position.
Get paid up front, Doug. That's all I got to say. Get paid up front.
Get better. Because here's the surprise meter. It's right at nothing. Sorry.
Yeah, it's got almost 10,000. There are 10,000 tweets associated with Collins' name, and one of them says it's a letter by Donald Trump's new lawyer, Doug Collins. Yes, that Doug Collins is remarkable. So it deals with I guess some stuff related to the House Committee on Oversight and Reform and Senate Judiciary Committee. So pretty interesting stuff. I haven't had time to really look into it, but that is notable.
I pulled up a Politico story that was saying that Donald Trump's legal team signaled Monday they will not immediately try to block testimony of former Justice Department officials who have called before Congress, potentially clearing a roadblock for multiple investigations touching on the former president's tenure.
Yeah, I think that's what it is here. So that's what this relates to. But
Doug,
I just thought it was interesting.
Doug, don't do anything till the check clears.
Yeah.
Rudy.
He has $100 million. He has $100 million sitting in his campaign account. Like, get that check and cash it before you do anything else. Like, don't deposit it. Cash it. Take it. And
no, don't cash it, because then you're subject to civil asset forfeiture. So take a risk.
That's fair. Scott, calm down. We're getting there. We're getting
Don't
there.
carry large sums
Invest
of cash.
in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah,
That's what we're supposed to do.
Staying on the theme of state politics, and yes, Scott, we are getting there, but not yet. Brian Kemp has authorized some money for law enforcement to help deal with the crime wave in Atlanta, and this is a really interesting point for me, because, like, as someone who works on criminal justice for a living, as well as someone who was critical of the governor in 2019 and early 2020, because he kept deviating money away from, like, he was deviating money away from drug courts into more spending for law enforcement and GBI. And I had a problem with that, because drug courts have been pretty successful in the state of Georgia. And at the time, Atlanta was experiencing, or Georgia, more holistically, Georgia was experiencing pretty low. I mean, like, we had the lowest crime rate, I think the second lowest crime rate in the last 30 or 40 years. So we were doing pretty well here in Georgia. Obviously, COVID, and, well, I'm not going to blame it solely on COVID, but COVID is a part of it, has had an impact. We've seen job losses as a result of COVID. And then the people largely staying indoors, locking themselves down, not to the same degree in Georgia as they did in other places around the country. I think that has had a major impact on crime. And then you also had the added racial unrest that we've seen over the past 16 months or so, particularly in Atlanta, as it relates to the shooting last summer. So, but Kemp giving money, I do think it's necessary, because I saw Manuel's Tavern today post something on Facebook where they were saying, look, if you feel uncomfortable going to your car at night, tell us and we'll have someone walk out with you. I mean, so wow. There's that much of a concern about crime in Atlanta, where people are, businesses like Manuel's and others are starting to take notice and starting to try to make customers feel a little bit more at ease, especially those customers who might be coming from OTP, coming in ITP.
Suburbia.
Yeah. To have dinner or shopping or whatever the case may be. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any particular neighborhood that's immune. Even Buckhead has experienced its recent crime, like experienced crime recently, and some shootings as well. So I'm curious to get you guys' reaction, what you think about Kemp's moves here.
Well, the unit that he has created, he created it out of his emergency fund. He took $5 million of his fund last year, created it's and he's calling it a crime suppression unit. It's primarily state troopers, but also some multi-jurisdictional help is there as well. It's for the local police officers to get resources that they're not getting from the city. What was interesting to me was Keisha Lance Bottom's reaction of, the governor's just taking shots at me because it's popular, and she pointed out that crime is rising everywhere. And that may be the case, but the type of crime that's rising is not the same type of violent crime that we're seeing in Atlanta. And it's certainly not at the same level as what we're seeing in Atlanta. I wish, honestly, I'm a huge advocate for local control to a point. And I wish the mayor would get off her butt, or off her bottom, as the case may be, and actually do her freaking job instead of having the governor or even the Speaker of the House have to prod her into doing something about this. I know she's not running for re-election, so she feels free from that burden of re-election and not having to face the voters for her decisions and her policy positions. But good gravy, people's lives are in danger here. And when you have somebody like Manuel's Tavern, a bastion of progressivism and liberal thought, going out and saying, hey, look, we recognize there's a problem here. That says a lot. It does. So
I wouldn't go so far to say Manuel's is a bastion of progressivism. It's the
I was going to say the same
establishment
thing.
Democrat bar. It's not the AOC bar. It's the Joe Biden bar.
I mean, it was basically where the modern Georgia Democratic Party was founded. But if I recall correctly, the owner is Manuel's son is a Republican.
Well, I'm sorry, anywhere that has an FDR painting on the wall probably is more where I'm describing them than you are.
That's fair. No, but Eric, I am curious to get you're the only one of us who lives in Atlanta proper, so I'm curious to get your 2 cents here.
Yeah, and so I live in APD Zone 1, which is the west side and northwest side of Atlanta. And I would say from our experience here, we've seen the uptick in like petty theft, car break-ins and stuff like that. We have not seen the violent crime increase that other parts of the city have. But from the Atlanta perspective, APD does have a crime suppression unit, which is the logical outcome, or the Phoenix from the old Red Dog team, which if you are unfamiliar, for anyone listening, Katherine Johnson was a lady in her late 90s, and the APD Red Dog team broke in on a no-knock warrant and ended up killing her. And after that event, the Red Dog team was disbanded. But as soon as I hear a crime suppression unit, honestly, this is the first thing that comes to mind. Is what is this going to look like? Are areas that are already over policed going to see more of this, or is this actually going to stay in the areas where you're actually seeing some of these upticks? I think George Cheedy said this morning in his email that there have been 83 murders in the city of Atlanta, which is 8 higher this time this year than it was this time last year, and is 30 higher than this time in 2019. So yeah, there's definitely a problem. It would be nice if city council and the mayor would actually listen to some of the recommendations from the police reform stuff that was happening last year, and actually trying to do something about this. But it just seems that it's going to be this political pawn that's going to go back and forth between the city and the state, and no one's going to actually address it. They're just going to throw money at a problem, and possibly it might get addressed by someone, but most likely I don't have a lot of faith in it.
Buzz, you want to weigh in?
Well, I think Eric mentioned George Cheedy's. Everyone should be reading his Substack. I think it's
yeah, absolutely. Like, it's fantastic journalism.
Yeah, he's really digging in. It's not as excuse me. The mayor's trying to say, well, this is a COVID crime increase. It's more complicated than that, as George is exploring. But yeah, I think it's going to remain in the news because the woman who was killed in Piedmont Park has grabbed a lot of attention. The mayor, in her conference, when she was talking about that murder, also made note of a young African-American man who was a 17-year-old, I believe, who was murdered in a different park. So there is a real problem here, and it's going to remain in the news. And
I think his name was Jakari, and after his murder, the city shut down all the public pools that were outdoor.
Yeah.
Which I was having a conversation with a city council member about that, and it seems to be an interesting contracting issue, that they contract out the security of the outdoor pools with non-APD police officers, and the lifeguard, I guess, clearinghouse, if you will, none of their lifeguards are willing to come into the city of Atlanta. So that's why the whole blanket closure of outdoor public pools happened in the city of Atlanta.
Wow.
Interesting. I don't know. I even noticed something the other day. There's been talk of a potential serial killer in Atlanta. I don't know if you guys have seen this. There's because of that murder in Piedmont Park. Apparently, I don't know if this is related to the one that happened in Piedmont Park, but they also found a body in Stockbridge recently, and somebody asked me about it the other day, and I went and Googled it, and it turns out like there was this murder in Stockbridge where they found some remains actually near where I lived. It's on the same street I lived on in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so that caught me by surprise.
Yeah. So, and I think fueling that speculation was that apparently APD called in the FBI to assist with the murder of the woman in Piedmont Park, and the police chief Bryant addressed that and said they've explored. The first thing you look at in a murder is most murders are committed by somebody that somebody the victim knew, and that they've explored those leads, can't find anything, so they brought in the FBI to try to help because they're at a dead end. So I think, and in regard to the thing in Stockbridge, article I read on WSB was Mark Winnie asking the police down there, so we're dealing with a potential serial killer,
right? And
the police chief said, we're not ruling anything out. So that's I don't know, that I think in the age of Twitter and everything, folks, obviously you have fear going on. Somebody murdered in Piedmont Park is going to scare a lot of people who a different demographic than
everybody's anxiety. I hope you got your soul off next to you.
It is one thing for us here on the Peach Pundit Podcast to engage in wild speculation. It is quite a different thing for WSB TV to engage in wild speculation.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We make no pretense about being responsible.
A dude sitting on the internet.
That's exactly right.
We make no pretense about being responsible journalists. So
none of us consider ourselves journalists.
No,
at all.
And if you do, you're wrong.
Yeah. If you do, I am biased as hell. So I am not.
We don't hide it.
Yeah,
we don't hide it.
So speaking about my bias against people, Scot recently gave testimony on civil asset forfeiture. And Scot, we are now at the point in the podcast where you can talk about this.
Oh, it's all about no, never mind. I was invited to speak in front of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission today on a series of hearings that they're doing on civil asset forfeiture. They were interested in knowing what my perspective was as a state lawmaker who had been advocating for reform. And if you're not familiar with what civil asset forfeiture is, Google it. It's really just it's a process by which government can take your property from you by just simply thinking that you are related to criminal activity. And in Georgia, we do not require that you are charged with a crime. We can just simply take your property from you and send you to a civil process that's separate from criminal, and you will never see your property again.
You don't have to be arrested. You don't even have to be arrested.
You don't have to be charged. And interestingly enough,
and you don't get the suit filed against you. Your stuff gets the suit filed against it.
Right. And
see Texas versus one gold crucifix.
Yeah. or the state of Georgia versus $136,656.39 as the case may be, which is often the case, is they go after cash. And in my testimony today, in front of the committee, I was joined by a lieutenant from South Fulton, the city of South Fulton, and also a separate person that represented the prosecuting attorney's council. And I got to go last, so I was able to kind of tailor my testimony to point out some of the things that they were talking about. And the number one thing, like the South Fulton law enforcement officer, she did a great job of explaining how the safeguards are in policy at her level, at her agency level. You know, they do things like criminal background checks, and before they go forward with any type of civil forfeiture. And it's like, that's great. That's a policy that you guys have implemented, not a law. The gentleman who was from prosecuting attorney's counsel was talking about all the different nuances. He took, we were all supposed to get 12 to 15 minutes. He took like almost 40 minutes explaining the process, and they let him go with it. When it was my turn,
Pete Scandalakis?
No, it wasn't. A gentleman named Mr. Bergman was his name. But one of the things that came up was, the focus was how does this policy of civil asset forfeiture impact people of color? And this is one of these areas where I preach, this is equal protection under the law. It doesn't matter what your race, creed, background, whatever it is, you should be treated the same under the law. But here in Georgia, it definitely has been used to target African Americans and other minorities, specifically in Banks County. Banks County is familiar to the podcast because Mr. Dan Gassaway has been talking about how the sheriff there doesn't live in the county, if you recall. And so we've had some discussions about Banks County in the past. But so in 2015, they pulled over a member of the Atlanta Hawks. A sheriff's deputy picked up Mike Scot from the Atlanta Hawks. He had $1,600 in cash, a little bit of ecstasy, a little bit of marijuana, and also filed a report with a fact pattern that would have required the gentleman in the car to be driving at about 600 miles per hour based on mile markers. Mr. Scott from the Atlanta Hawks was able to hire an attorney and defend himself. And what they found was that one particular officer between 2015 and 16 had 1,400 stops. He gave out 8 citations. He had 47 arrests. 44 of those 47 were minorities. And he took in $285,000 in cash from those stops.
Interesting. Well, I was going to say also the interesting thing about that is that there are classes that are put on by private entities that will actually reward officers who come in and do this training on how to take people's stuff, and they give them rewards for the people who seize the most money.
So that's game theory, right? They've made it into a game. They've made it into like a little Facebook game then in that case. But what was interesting is, one of the things that Mr. Bergman in his testimony pointed out is that it is required that counties and law enforcement agencies report every year what they've seized and what they spent the money on. And in 2015 and 2016, that's $285,000. And then Banks County, and I'm going to be writing a blog post for Peach Pundit on this when I dig in some more, but they didn't report in 2017. They didn't report in 2018. They didn't report in 2019. In 2020, they reported a little less than $65,000 total. So you go from 136,000, 148,000 in those 2 years combined in aggregate, you get to the 285, down to 60,000 after not reporting for several years after you got busted targeting minorities. So there's something stinky still going on over there in Banks County, and it may not just be because the sheriff is allegedly living in a different county.
Well, now that's one of the things about forfeiture, especially Georgia's forfeiture law, because I remember, I think it was right around the time that you introduced your original bill back in, what was it, 2016, Scott?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where I came and testified, where I think I had overheard someone making a comment like, Georgia's already done this. It's like, yeah, no, you didn't. Not really.
Right.
You made forfeiture laws more uniform, but you didn't address evidentiary standards. You didn't address innocent owners. There was a lot of things you didn't do that you could have done that you whiffed on. And and especially like what we've seen in terms of transparency, like it's hit or miss whether counties follow the law. Yes. It's completely hit or miss. And Georgia, there are states that have gone that are of like Arizona. Arizona had, prior to this year, Arizona had reformed its civil asset forfeiture laws. They had made the evidentiary standard clear and convincing evidence, put the burden of proof on the property or on the government. And then this year they tied it to, they got rid of they basically said you have to be convicted of a crime. They had a criminal conviction requirement. We're seeing more and more states do that. And as well as some states closing the federal loophole where you can't circumvent state law to use federal law, because federal law sucks too. But this is civil asset forfeiture is probably, you talk to people about it. There are two things I know about in my time in working in criminal justice reform that you can't believe it happens here. The first one is that judges can still use conduct for which you've been acquitted in your sentencing based on a preponderance of the evidence. We call it acquitted conduct. There's a bill at the federal level to address it, which has already been marked up by Senate Judiciary. The other one is civil asset forfeiture. People cannot believe this happens here because there is no due process.
Yeah.
We base it on this medieval notion that the property is evil, so therefore we're going to charge the property. We're not going to charge the person.
Right. The most egregious.
It's a legal fiction.
The most egregious line in Georgia code, all of it, is the line in OCGA that says if you are found not guilty of a crime, you are still subject to civil asset forfeiture, and you should still lose your property.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, we can't fix that because the Georgia Sheriff's Association comes out and fights every year and tells legislators they're going to work against them back in their home district. And when you have, like, I was lucky, I only represent part of one county, but you have state house members. Gerald Green represents 11 counties.
Mm-hmm.
He has 11 sheriffs he has to answer to, and all 11 members, all 11 of those sheriffs are the most popular elected official in their counties. And so you don't want to go up against that, especially with Gerald, because he's in this 50-50 district. He's constantly fighting for his political life. You need the sheriff on your side. Yeah. So, I can't legitimately ask Gerald to lay down his political life for an issue when, unless he's just ready to go. That's the only way it'll ever happen. Or he loses and his opponent comes in and is a big proponent of reform.
No, at some point in time, we're coming off the Tim's case back a couple of years ago. I think we're at a point right now. The only way we're going to pave a way for states like Georgia to do something on this is for the Supreme Court to say, you know what, this is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think they've been trying to get there for a while now.
Seems like Clarence Thomas wants to do that.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas wants to do that. He wants to do qualified immunity. He wants to do some other things as well. But forfeiture is just particularly pernicious. And unless we get some reform at the federal level, which there is legislation, the FAIR Act has been reintroduced by Congressman Tim Walberg. Still waiting on Senator Paul to reintroduce his companion legislation over on the Senate side. But the FAIR Act probably goes too far for most law enforcement entities because it gets rid of equitable sharing. If you get rid of that, you're stopping that. I mean, there's no need for states to close the loophole anymore.
So equitable sharing, for those who don't know, is this end around where if a state puts a limit on whether or not you can go and get this property and its value from a suspected criminal, they'll just go to the federal government, and the federal government says, we'll treat it as a federal crime, and we'll take part of it, but we'll give the rest to you to do whatever you want with. And there are efforts. I introduced a bill that would say, unless it's over $100,000, you don't get any of it. It goes into the general fund. Yeah. And I had a member of the Sheriff's Association said, well, why do you think that's fair? And I was like, because it's not about money, right? And he goes, well, why should I have to bear the cost of enforcing the law if I'm not going to get the money? I was like, but you just told me it's not about the money. Your job is to enforce the law. I thought you were in this to damage the criminal enterprise, right? And it's like right over his head what had just happened there. So it's 100% about the money. And I think, ultimately we're going to have to figure out how we're going to fund law enforcement. It may require.
But it's a sign of a state that's too strong. If they can come in and take your stuff without actually convicting you of anything, it's just unconscionable that's still a thing.
Yeah, and this is freaking America, right? This shouldn't be happening at all.
Yeah.
I'd like to just get a plug in for my employer. Georgia Center for Opportunity, on our website, we did a report, a deep look at Georgia's laws. It included what Scott mentioned. We took a look at the compliance rates among the law enforcement agencies across the state, and as Scott mentioned, there's quite a few who just don't file reports. So and I don't think the law clarifies that. I think what you hear from them, as Scott mentioned, well, we didn't have anything to report. Well, how do we know? I mean, how does the public know? That's bad transparency right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of
the law enforcement.
I'm sorry, let me get on the point real quick. Mr. Bergman, in his testimony, pointed out that there is a law that requires them to report, and it's up to the prosecuting attorney and the local law enforcement agency to actually enforce that law. Yeah. So you have a sheriff's department or even a prosecuting attorney in this case responsible for blowing the whistle on themselves.
It's
a dumb system.
And Eric, I'll let you chime in here just 1 second. The only way you're going to get state or counties to and municipalities to do this is to hold funding over their heads.
Yeah.
Other like you're going to have to hold them accountable in some way. So if these counties, municipalities don't do this, they should see some funding cut. That's it. Eric?
Yeah.
So one of the things I was going to point out is just how fractured we are as a state when it comes to law enforcement agencies. Where I live, I think there is jurisdiction of at least 4 that I can name off the top of my head. I've got APS Police Department, I've got MARTA Police Department, I've got APD, I've got the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. Presumably, if the Fulton County Police Department still exists, I would be in their jurisdiction as well. And that's just one city in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Like we have 159 sheriffs that all have their own departments. You've got other counties like Cobb, whose county commission had an issue with their sheriff a while back, and so they have a Cobb County Police Department. You have schools or school systems that have their own police departments, APS, DeKalb, Fulton, others. You have universities that have their own police departments, Morehouse, Spelman, UGA, Georgia State, my alma mater. You have state agencies like the state troopers, the GBI, like you have all of these different entities. And you have small cities that have 600 people that have a police department rather than the sheriff's office take care of it. Like there's all this, everybody does something different. Georgia, I love you for your sense of local control, but sometimes a little bit more uniform standard would be helpful. Just so that you have, I mean, there's probably easily 500 police agencies within the state of Georgia.
Porterdale, Georgia has, so Newton County has a Newton County Sheriff's Department. We don't have a police department, but Porterdale and Covington, I know for a fact, have their own police departments. Porterdale has a population of less than 1,500 people. They had up until, I don't know if they've gotten rid of them because I haven't seen them in front of the police department. They used to have 2 armored vehicles. Why? Are we getting crazy down in Porterdale, Georgia? Like which has like a main street and a few buildings, like if you like a restaurant.
If we actually just explore this, we'd be peeling back some layers of an onion that I don't want to take a bite of.
That's entirely fair. And Henry County Sheriff's Department, Henry County.
I have no problem saying that police departments shouldn't have tanks.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. The 1033 program should be eliminated, but that's neither here nor there. We're gonna move on. So, Scott,
let me just make one quick point. I think in the climate we're in, we just talked about rising crime across the country. I think the challenge for those of us who want to see reform in this, how do you do it while at the same time talking about we're going to fight this rise in crime? So
yeah, I have an answer. Challenge, and the answer is you just stay the process. You know, you still have that as a tool. What I've proposed allows law enforcement to continue to use civil asset forfeiture, but they have to wait before they take the property permanently until after a conviction. And if there's no conviction, they don't get any property from it. And you restore this concept of innocent until proven guilty. You maintain your support of law enforcement and also fighting crime, but you honor the American promise of innocent until proven guilty. That's how you do it.
Well
said.
I will say,
mic drop.
Coach Scott should post his testimony on peachpundit.com so our listeners and viewers can read it. I know I certainly would learn something from it, even though I used to be really knowledgeable about forfeiture. It's been a while since I've dipped my toes in that water. So, so turning to kind of mixing some state and national politics. She who shall not be named.
Is there like a female version of Voldemort? Did I miss a memo? What's happening?
Yes, so she represents Georgia 14.
We just say 14.
She represents Georgia's 14th congressional district. She who should not be named.
Which does not grow corn, but she would like to go see the place that grows corn.
Yeah, so so this is what the tweet from Jennifer J. Jacobs on Twitter says. News, she who shall not be named, GOP Congresswoman from Georgia, plans to appear at Iowa State Fair August 19th. The fair is a traditional venue for politicians contemplating a presidential campaign, so it's sparking questions about whether she who shall not be named may try to seek the White House. I don't know. I don't know, man.
All right.
I don't know, man. It's early. It's 2021. It seems we got 2024 is a ways away. Of course, the GOP candidates will start announcing right after Christmas next year.
Yep.
And then they'll have the first debates probably in May or June or July. So we're still a ways away from this. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty interesting. Scott, you wanted to say something.
That's one word for it.
I thought, like Oz, the land of Oz and make believe was Kansas, not Iowa. And that's, I mean, like, wow. I mean, did she click her heels together and say there's no place like home and get transported from Roswell, Georgia, all the way up to Iowa?
No, I think someone dumped water on her and she melted and just reappeared in Iowa.
Well, here's the other question. I mean, that's a good point, Jason. Keep the water buckets away from her up there. We want her to come back whole, right? I mean, we'll pray for her health and safety. But here's the bottom line: is does Trump know? Like, did she ask permission from her master before she's allowed to go to the land of Iowa and corn?
That could be loosely taken as another Harry Potter reference. So you're saying she's Dobby and Trump has given her a sock. Master wants Dobby to be free.
I mean, I'm looking around. Maybe we can give her a Savannah Bananas hat before she goes and set her free. Geez, I just wonder how. I do wonder, what her master would think of her running off to Iowa by herself.
I mean, this one.
Well, we've seen him turn on people for less.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, she seems to fancy herself as the Trump's heir apparent, and so
boy, is
But
Matt
Trump's
Gaetz
not
going to be
dead.
disappointed when he finds out.
Josh Hawley would like a word.
yeah, there's a couple dozen who think they're the heir apparent.
Trump's not dead. He's still around, folks. He's thinking about running for president. I'm just saying.
Well, there was that news that Trump, Mark Meadows came out and said, well, the cabinet met.
The cabinet.
I thought it wasn't Biden's cabinet, so it's some other cabinet.
Right.
And Trump had talked to them, and they're ready to roll. So
yeah, and he made it very clear that the subject matter was them pulling together to support Donald Trump for president in 2 years.
The counterpoint to that is Kushner recently started his own investment firm, and he was like one of the main people he largely ran the 2016 and 2020 campaigns.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm wondering if he's not involved, should we take it serious?
It wouldn't be the first conflict of interest he's had.
That's entirely fair. No, I mean,
but yeah, I mean, it's a heck of a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to run a presidential campaign.
Maybe she really just wanted a deep fried stick of pepper jack cheese. Maybe that's really why she's going. She heard the corn dogs were amazing, and
they deep fry stuff outside of the South.
Yeah, in Iowa.
Deep fry Oreos there, bro.
Wow.
Yeah,
dude, deep fried Oreos are delicious.
They are.
Yeah.
You can get them at the South Carolina State Fair. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Dang. So there's rednecks everywhere, is what you're telling me.
There's a couple places in Atlanta that serve them too. They're actually really good. But yeah. So, but anyway, that's something for you folks to keep an eye on.
They're as good as fried pickles. Like, it's delicious.
One of those is not a dessert. That's not even.
But they're all tasty.
Just speak for yourself, man. We all have our own things.
It's fine. That's
go buy a vinyl record or something.
Fried pickles, fried okra,
No need for
fried
pickles to
Oreos.
exist.
It's all tasty. Like, just give me the whole plate.
Fried okra is the devil. And
yeah, I agree.
Fried okra is pretty good.
Stop it.
It's delicious. I just made it the other day, and I grew the okra in my backyard.
Oh God! Why are you the worst person I've ever met? So it's something to keep an eye out for. That she who should not
I'm from Alabama. Of course, I eat okra.
Oh, that's. I knew there was something off about you. You're from Alabama. So something to keep an eye out for. She who shall not be named is question mark considering the presidential run.
/she who shall not be named 2024.
Yeah, God help us all. So
Chaos agent from 14 goes to Iowa.
So
I will say this, Greg Bluestein tweeted, imagine an Abrams versus she who shall not be named battle for 2024 White House.
Well, Biden says he's running for re-election.
I think
I thought he was only going to be a one term.
So
People say all sorts of stuff.
That was the speculation that came out when he was still the Democratic presidential nominee.
Yeah.
But that was like aides and advisors who were speculating. He has said that he's going to run for president again.
Well, you never.
Can
I
we
mean, of
stop
course.
electing boomers. Like, nothing against the boomers that are listening, but like, can we get someone a little bit younger than 70 to run for president?
You know, Biden's will be 80 when he runs for re-election.
And look, of course he's going to say that, because you don't say, "Well, I'm just a one term," because then you're immediately a lame duck. So why? Of course he's running again.
Right. But so moving on, because I want to. There's a couple other things I want to talk about. So this also has a little bit of an intersection with federal level. I moved it down because I wanted to talk about Voldemort first, female Voldemort first. So last week was probably one of the most partisan weeks I have seen on Capitol Hill since January 6th. And it was for a bunch of different factors. One, they had the first January 6th select committee hearing, and that turned into, Buzz, I think we discussed some of the, I guess we haven't discussed, I can't remember if we discussed that or not, the rules committee stuff last week. We did discuss that on last week's podcast.
Yep.
And about Andrew Clyde. But something that happened, I think it may have happened that morning or the next day. They're trying to enforce the mask mandate in the House of Representatives by directing the sergeant at arms to initially warn someone who's not wearing a mask, and then if they continue to refuse to wear one, to immediately arrest that person. Initially, yeah, Scott. Initially, it was thought it applied to members too, and they backed down, said it doesn't apply to members, so it does apply to staff and any visitors who visit the Capitol, or at least the House side of the Capitol. But with the resurgence of COVID and the new cases we're seeing related to the Delta variant, now I'm seeing the CDC says 90+% of the cases that are in the United States right now are Delta variant cases. We are seeing a lot of talk about mask mandates coming back. I think the city of Atlanta has already imposed one, and I'm sure other jurisdictions either have or are going to. So I'm curious to get you guys' thoughts, because I think a lot of us thought we were out of this, or at least there was light at the end of the tunnel, and it seems we're going in reverse, back towards the darkness.
Go get a vaccine.
Oh, I agree with you.
I was in Chicago over the weekend where they had Lollapalooza, and people in Chicago don't give a squat about your mask mandate. I'm gonna just put it that way. And the people that went to Lollapalooza didn't either. As a matter of fact, I kind of wish they'd have a mask on, because it would have doubled the amount of clothing they were wearing. But
does Chicago care about anything outside of Chicago?
I don't know.
The one point I'll make on that is because I seen the same picture on a Facebook group this week, and Lollapalooza was apparently doing temperature checks.
They were. And you had to have proof of vaccination in order to get in.
Right.
And that's, I mean, at the gate, they had a big sign, be prepared to show your proof of vax. Still, though, Delta variant, whatever else, there are factors that could potentially cause you to pick it up in your nose, carry it around, sneeze on grandma dies. I mean, that's the reality of what we're dealing with here. The problem is really going to come for a policymaker, because there has been so many different data points. There have been so many points that conflict with one another. Yeah. And so now the public doesn't trust the government. They do not trust the media. They do not trust any of our institutions, CDC, Fauci, whatever. And so you are never going to, Buzz hit on this a couple of weeks ago. You're never going to convince somebody to go get a vaccine by guilting them into it. Right. You're not going to convince them to get a vaccine by forcing them into it. They'll rebel. So really what you can do is say, look, 164 million people have had the vaccine and they're not dying. The people who are getting the virus and getting sick are unvaccinated by and large, the vast majority, over 90% plus.
Yeah.
You can show people and then encourage them, like Governor Kemp has done, which I think, if we look at the difference between the governor of Alabama and the governor of Georgia, you have the governor of Alabama throwing her hands up in the air and saying, I don't know, I can't, what am I supposed to do? Force you to do this. And then the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, saying, look, this is still serious. We're going to maximize your liberty. You're going to have to take ownership of your own health, and don't trust me. I'm the government. Don't trust me. Go talk to your own doctor. Go talk to people you do trust. Go talk to people you have a relationship with and get their point of view, because they're probably going to tell you to go get vaccinated. And it's not because they're getting paid or there's some grand conspiracy. It's because this stuff is working and it's going to help. So we can, we can tell people here, go get vaccinated, but in the end, that's not going to work. We need to encourage them to go talk to people they actually do trust. Don't trust me. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Eric's word for it. Don't take Buzz's word for it. Jason, don't take his word for it.
Definitely don't take mine.
Go talk to somebody you do trust. Go tell them what
And
the situation is for you.
And Kay Ivey may have thrown up her own hands, but the state of Alabama has brought out the big guns of Nick Saban coming out and saying, don't ruin football season, go get a vaccine.
Yeah. That might be what gets through to folks in Alabama.
He's like, we got vaccinated, the teams got vaccinated, and I'm not letting anyone play that doesn't have a vaccine. So if you don't want to ruin football season, and if no one is aware, I don't know how, but Alabama is kind of a big deal in college football, and it's a big deal in that state. And if there is a patron saint of Alabama, it is probably going to be Nick Saban, since he has already outdone Bear Bryant.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think because the media is being very irresponsible in its reporting on this, and because they keep talking about the number of vaccinated people who have been confirmed to have COVID-19, and it's like, I don't think anybody ever said that if you got a vaccine, you would never catch COVID-19. That's nobody. Those words, if anybody said that to you, they were lying to you. The vaccine does is make your symptoms less serious, and it basically keeps your ass out of the hospital is ultimately what it does. That's the goal of it. It's to relieve the strain on the system, because we are going to do what we're going to do. We're going to travel. We can't expect us to stay locked in our homes for 2 years. That's not how this works. So it was just basically there to mitigate the symptoms that may come if you were to catch it. And it's really frustrating to see the media talk about this, because I think their media might wind up contributing to the chaos. Yeah.
Oh, no doubt about that. And CDC's, as Scott mentioned, they've been all over the map on all kinds of things. There is just a loss of trust, and it is. So yeah, it's a mess. But I think if you look at the charts, there's definitely been a separation between, you can see cases rise, but you don't see deaths rising commensurate to that. So I think that what the vaccine has done, to Jason's point, it's separated that. The vaccine's working, and there may be some people who do get it, but even that number is pretty small. The number of people, the so-called breakthrough cases are still a pretty small number, but it's there. And this, the people who are going to the hospital and are sadly dying from this are almost exclusively people who are not vaccinated now.
Yeah.
And if you're tired of hearing about Delta, you're probably going to get tired of hearing about Lambda, which has also come out in the last little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an article about the Lambda variant today. So get vaccinated, and we can get through this quicker, and we don't have to be locked down.
Yeah. I would like that very much if people who watch this would really heed because we've mentioned this multiple times throughout the course of what is our 21st episode. Oh yeah, guys, we hit 20 last week.
Like Scott may not go out and say, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you, go get vaccinated.
And you're looking at 4 of the most distrustful people of government you'll ever meet sitting here.
Especially because people like Buzz Brockway can get elected to something. That's just crazy.
Well, that's true.
I would have voted for Buzz.
And then the two of y'all hired me, so
yeah. It's a true story.
I don't think anybody heard what I just said. That's okay. I said I would have voted for Buzz before I voted for Scott. Oh,
no, I can't. I was going to say I think I might have voted for Buzz before. No, but that's not true.
So Georgia election law related news. So 57 members of the United States House of Representatives have signed a amicus brief in the Northern District of Georgia in support of the state of Georgia's position, and basically to uphold the law, uphold SB 202. Signers of the amicus brief include Buddy Carter, Andrew Clyde, Drew Ferguson, She Who Shall Not Be Named, Jody Heiss, Barry Loudermilk, Austin Scott. It looks like this was actually, in fact, the press release from says that this was led by Congressman Rick Allen, Georgia 12. Notable signers include, let's see here, Jim Banks, who's the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, Congressman Andy Biggs, the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. We see who else. We got Nancy Mace as a signer, Ralph Norman from South Carolina, Chip Roy, Steve Scalise. So you got leadership. Elise Stefanik is also a signer. So you got some pretty notable members here. And Mike Johnson, who's also the vice chair at the House Republican Conference and the former chairman of the Republican Study Committee. So it seems like the at least, this is roughly a quarter of the House Republican Conference signing this amicus. So it seems like Republicans are certainly, at least federally, are coming out swinging for SB 202.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an easy defense, frankly. When you compare it to other state laws around elections, that what is the federal government going to argue here? That Georgia needs to be treated differently than Delaware or New York or some of the other northeastern states who no longer do have. You have to have an excuse to have an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot. We don't have that here. So when you start comparing apples to apples, what is the federal government going to do in their case? I think it's an easy sign on if you're a Republican legislator to say you're going to be part of that brief, because in the end, I think we're going to end up on the winning side of history.
And you had
I do have a question for Jody Heiss. Where is the line of which election laws we're going to follow? Because he totally voted against the electors from the state of Georgia. And now he's saying the Georgia election law that he was very much not a fan of earlier, he's totally supportive now. How do we make that decision of which election laws do we want to follow from the state that you happen to represent?
You look at the outcome, and if it's the outcome you want, you follow the law. If you don't, then you toss some out. So
I have a meeting with Heiss's office on Monday. Please don't screw this up for me, Eric.
If they have ever read anything from Eric the Younger, they know that I'm not a fan. And I have not been a fan since 2014. So
I think one thing to build on what Scott just said, the Supreme Court recently ruled in favor, upheld 2 items in Arizona's election law, which are also contained in SB 202. So I think that strengthens the amicus brief and makes the government's job much tougher to try to get this thing thrown out. So
it's going to be interesting to see what happens. This thing is going to the Supreme Court. It's going to take a couple years to get there, but this thing is heading there. And the Brnovich case out of Arizona, if that is gives us an idea of reading the tea leaves, it seems like Georgia's going to be successful. But we'll see. Scott, do you have anything you want to add before we close it out?
No, that's perfect.
The last thing on the agenda for tonight, and you guys can have your evening back or day, whenever the hell you're listening to this, is so last week, at the end of the week, the eviction moratorium that was passed as part of the CARES Act expired, and a couple Democratic members of Congress, Cori Bush from Missouri and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, protested by sleeping outside the Capitol, and eventually won an executive order signed by Joe Biden, whose White House just a day or two before said that they didn't see any way they could do it unilaterally. And yet here they are signing in a unilateral continuation of the eviction moratorium. This one doesn't really make much sense, but okay.
I'm thinking back to
the logic was, if you sign it now, it's still going to take 3 months to go through the courts. So perhaps Congress will actually do something by then. But if Congress continues to act the way we've seen them act for the last, 6 years, possibly even longer, outlook's grim. You probably got an 8-ball that you can shake and get a better answer as to what's going to happen on this one. But the fun part will be is it the city of Atlanta going to have to give back half the money for rent stabilization like they did in 2020? Because they, just like the workforce development grant they had received, they had to give half of that one back. They had to give half of the rental assistance back to the feds because they did not get it out to where it was supposed to go. So I can easily see the city of Atlanta dropping the ball again and
there was a pretty stunning story in the AJC today. To Eric's point, there's a lot of money, and in fairness, this may be the first time I ever say this. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a point. there's billions of these dollars that were supposed of rental assistance that were supposed to wind up in people's hands that have not, because, and that's the case in Georgia as well, millions, not billions, but there's all this money that is supposed to have arrived in people's hands to help them pay rent, and that has not been distributed yet. I think that's a real question. Why is that taking place? But then, Jason and I were joking before we came on air. It is pretty stunning to see a president of the United States stand up and say, "I'm signing this executive order, but I know it's unconstitutional." That's pretty stunning.
It's also pretty interesting that the House of Representatives. So I mentioned last week was a very partisan week for a bunch of different reasons. They were supposed to have votes through Friday of last week, and the House Rules Committee noticed that they would consider a bill. It was HR 4791, which the short title of that bill is the Protecting Renters from Evictions Act of 2021. They were supposed to consider the rule for that bill. I think they even did, but they never took any votes on Friday. So this thing lapsed without any legislative action. Actually, they never did a rule. So they noticed it, but they never had the meeting for it. And the legislation, I mean, it didn't die. They can take it up when they come back, but they're not coming back till September 20th. So Ocasio-Cortez, who I rarely agree with her on a couple things here and there, but not often. She explicitly said, you can't blame this one on Republicans.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
How about her being right twice a day?
But
seriously though, if you're a property owner and you're renting out, what's happening to you right now? I mean, is the bank calling the note? Are you getting the same protection as the renter in this case? Because the revenue is clearly not coming.
Yeah.
And did these people not use their stimulus money to pay their rent? Did they go out and buy Xboxes? I mean, what happened?
Yeah.
We pumped billions and trillions of dollars into this economy, and we're paying for that now with higher prices on everything.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they use some of that money to pay their rent?
And you're about to spend $1 trillion more, and that's just on the infrastructure. And then you may have the quote unquote human infrastructure reconciliation bill, which may spend. I mean, I know Sinema's throwing a wrench in Democrats' plans by saying she's not going to vote for a $3.5 trillion budget, but they want to go supposedly Sanders wanted to go as high as $6 trillion.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah. The lumber's going down.
It seems to me this whole issue is, to Scott's point, is kicking the can down the road. There's going to be a reckoning at some point in time, and they don't seem to be, Congress's inability to actually get anything done. They don't seem to be a way to trying to find a way out of this other than just to continue to kick the can down the road.
Everybody's messaging to the margins right now. Nobody's messaging to voters who are kind of tired of status. And that's the one thing, like when I talk to offices at the federal level, especially offices I know, one of the things that comes up, what are you hearing back home? It's like, people are tired of it. I mean, people are over the nonsense, like Republican and Democrat, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. They're just kind of over the way you guys yell at each other all the time and don't get anything done. And and this is not like me, this is not Jason Pye saying that Congress should get some things done, but at the very least, like, there are things where I know they have common ground on, and they're not moving the goalpost forward because for whatever reason, it's often partisanship. Somebody, like, things will be going too good and they'll try to do something at the last minute to sneak one through on the other side, and everything falls apart. So,
well, I think to me, that's what's so interesting about the smaller infrastructure package, smaller as opposed to not 6 trillion infrastructure package. It's actually, Washington as it used to be. And if they actually get that done, I think that's probably a big win for Mitch McConnell and for Joe Biden, because Joe Biden promised to, get rid of Trump, vote for me and get rid of Trump, and things will return to normal. And that's an instance where things return to normal, where they were able to get a deal done. Not everybody's happy with everything.
We had 4 years of infrastructure week, and we're finally having infrastructure week.
Yes. Trump promises infrastructure week, never delivered. Biden's getting it done. And it's a win for McConnell because he gets to say, see, we're not just here to obstruct all the time. We want to get stuff done too. Now, it's a crappy bill, but it's
going through regular order.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah. It's how the legislative process is supposed to work.
And even though there are members objecting to, like, there are members who are objecting to and holding amendments but they're trying to force votes on their own amendments. That's how the system's supposed to work.
Right.
I mean, I don't, it might slow things down, but this legislating ain't supposed to be easy. So
No.
I think that's
Why
all.
didn't you tell me that 10 years ago?
I think I did. But no, that was the end of the topic. So I'm gonna give you guys a
Scott,
chance.
they gave you strike and replace. That is making it easier, right?
Something like that, I guess.
Final thoughts.
Things that don't exist at the federal level, and like 5 people listen to this guy.
Yeah, I know. I trust me. I got it. And I trust me. The Readable Legislation Act was used to be offered by Justin Amash. I wanted that to pass whenever it was introduced, but it was Justin Amash who introduced it, so it was never getting passed. Final thoughts before we take off, guys.
Hey man, the Hawks signed John Collins and Trey Young. Look out, Eastern Conference. The Hawks are going to be good for a while. That's my final thought.
Just when I needed the Braves to be better than they were to help the Reds in the standings, they stunk it up, man. Can we get the Braves a little help, except for the middle of next week when they're playing the Reds? Because I think they really dropped the ball at the trade deadline. They don't have a center fielder. Their bullpen's a mess. Help me out, Jason. What's going on with the Braves?
I don't know. I mean, everybody keeps talking about the improvement to the outfield, and I see a couple of hitters who are hitting below 230, who have some power. I mean, there's no denying they have some pop in their bats, but they're hitting below 230. And then Jock Peterson, who's around 240.
Right.
But look, Peterson's hitting over 300 since he arrived in Atlanta.
That's not going to last.
Yeah, all the Cubs.
So Solar is not going to cover off the
sudden
barrel in the 2 days he's been here. So
all of the Cubs that got traded are hitting. Anthony Rizzo, home run first game as a Yankee.
Yeah.
Javier Baez, first home run as a Met. Chris Bryant, first game as a Giant, home run. I mean, what?
You have to pitch to those lineups. You can't pitch like the Cubs were that bad where they pitched around those guys. You didn't need to face them every.
4 players. How do you pitch around half the lineup?
Have faith in Double-A, okay? Have faith in Double-A. The Braves are going to win the division because the Mets suck, and so do the Phillies.
I don't have faith in the Braves this year. We still have needs in the bullpen. Starting pitching is hit or miss. I wish hit or miss. Well, I guess technically,
It
is hit. It's all hit or miss. It's all mostly hit though.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of guys who would probably be sitting the bench if they were playing for the Yankees, playing in the outfield. So, I mean, but we lost.
The good news is college football season is coming up.
That it is.
3 days.
That it is, and we can renew clean old-fashioned hate this year, and
yes,
there will be lots of ragging when Georgia beats Georgia Tech. So with that, folks, we are out of time. We'll see you maybe next week. If not, I might not be on, but the rest of these clowns will be. Anyway, peace out. Have a good rest of your week. We'll see you soon.
Bye,
Y'all
y'all.
have a good one.